devoted to the subject of Turkey, and we pointed out that in the northern Syrian city of Idlib, they call them terrorists, others are calling them rebels, and I call them the participants of a bogus jihad. That's my terminology for them. Waging a jihad with support from Santa Claus, and now when you are back against the wall, you want Santa Claus to send his weapons and send his men to come and help you and support you, and you call that a jihad? Don't you have any sense in your head? Only rocks in your head, huh? They can't understand, they can't think, so leave them. This is rubbish. And they call me all kinds of names. Yeah. The Syrian government has to be commended for having stood up and defended Syria from being taken over by the Zionists. That's right. The same way that the Zionists took over Libya, they wanted to take over Syria. They were able to succeed in Libya because they deceived the Russian delegate at the Security Council, and they got a resolution from the Security Council which allowed them to send in their NATO warplanes to support their bogus jihad and to be able to destroy the Libyan government and to kill the president, Muammar al-Gaddafi, rahimahullah. Yes, he was a good man in this sense that he stood up against them, like the way Syria is standing up against them. But you taking weapons and you taking money from Saudi Arabia and from the CIA to wage your jihad. Have you no shame? Have you no shame? The same thing is being done in China with the Uyghur Muslims. Don't they have any shame? They did it in Chechnya. Don't they have any shame? Is this the way you fight a jihad? I don't care for Arab public opinion. If Arab public opinion is going to be brainwashed, no. No, I have support from those who can think, and there are Arabs who can think. That's right. The Arab who can think would know that this is wrong, and those who are leading Saudi Arabia are traitors. That's right, traitors. So they've been waging their bogus jihad in Syria for so long, and the Syrian government must be commended for resisting them with courage. And more, we have to be thankful to Allah for Russia for having intervened militarily in Syria. If Russia had not intervened militarily in Syria, this bogus jihad would have succeeded. And we would have had a bogus khilafah. Yes, a bogus khilafah in Syria. Thank Allah we're saved from that. Thank Allah we've been saved from that. Thank you, Russia, for having intervened. But Russia was very, very courageous because it could have led to world war, it could have led to nuclear war. So we must commend. Did you hear that? Yes, we have to commend Russia and thank Russia. You could say what you want, I don't care 2 peanuts for what you say. We have to thank Russia, Orthodox Christian Russia, for having intervened in Syria to save Syria from becoming another Libya. But you're too stupid to understand that. So now, the last remnants of this bogus jihad army are in Idlib. And Turkey, which is a member of NATO, is protecting them. Yes, protecting them. And now that the Syrian government, the Syrian army is on the verge of liberating Idlib, Turkey is now showing her true colors. This country, which is supposed to be the leader of the world of Islam, potentially the leader of the world of Islam, and you are supporting the bogus jihad in Idlib. This is Syrian territory, not Turkish territory. The whole world recognizes that, even NATO recognizes that. And because the Syrian army is advancing and potentially is able to take over Idlib and finish off with that bogus jihad, now Turkey is warning of war. That Turkey is going to invade Syria by the end of February. Today is the 1st of March. And I have not received any news as yet of Turkey invading Syria. Last week I said that in the event that Turkey makes this disastrous mistake of launching an invasion of Syria, then that would open the door to the Malhama. I prayed that it would not happen. And alhamdulillah, so far it has not happened. And I ask you to join with me in making dua that the Turkish people don't commit such an act of monstrous stupidity. I think the Turkish army is not that stupid as the president to launch an invasion of Syria. No. So it has not taken place so far. It appears that Turkey has not invaded Syria so far, and Turkey cannot invade Syria without support from NATO. So is this the credentials that you have, the supporters of the Turkish government? Is this the credentials you have? Don't you ever read the Quran? Is it not important to you that Allah has given a command in the Quran? Shall I remind you of the Quran? That Turkey, which is still a member of NATO, should turn to NATO and beg NATO to come and help us? Asking NATO to come and impose a no-fly zone over Idlib so that the Turkish army can invade Syria? Don't you have any shame? Don't you know what Allah has said in the Quran? But you don't care for the Quran. You don't care for the Quran, and you expect us to respect you? None of those who listen to me respect you. None of those who get guidance from me have any respect for you, because you don't have respect for the Quran. Don't you know what Allah says in the Quran? Should I remind you what Allah says in the Quran? I don't know if I'll be alive next week. So let me say it one more time. I have said it 50,000 times already, but you can't hear me. Allah speaks in the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and I have to tell it to you one more time. Ba'ada'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. He said, this is not mutashabihah, this is muhkamah. This is plain and clear. It doesn't need any interpretation. We don't have to say Allah knows best. No, this is plain and clear. Muhkam. Ba'ada'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tattakhizu al-yahuda wal-nasara awliya. O you who have faith in Allah, do not take the Jews and do not take the Christians as your friends and allies. No, don't make the mistake of taking any verse of the Quran in isolation, or any part of a verse in isolation, because you can come to the conclusion, and it will be a wrong conclusion, that Allah is speaking about all Jews and all Christians, and saying don't take all Jews and take all Christians as your friends and allies. You would be monstrously mistaken. You'll be worse than a schoolboy. No, Allah is not doing that. You must study the Quran as a whole. That is proper methodology. Listen to the words which follow. Ba'aduhum awliya'u ba'd. Ba'aduhum أولياء بعض. Do not take such Jews and do not take such Christians بعدهم أولياء بعض. Have you heard that? Or is your skull so thick you cannot hear? Do not take such Jews and do not take such Christians as your friends and allies, ba'aduhum awliya'u ba'd, who are themselves friends and allies of each other. وَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُم مِّنكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. And whosoever from amongst you turn to them for friendship and alliance, you belong to them, you are no longer a part of this ummah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And Allah does not provide guidance to a wicked people. The Quran is anticipating, if I may be allowed to use that term. If it's not, then tell me what's a better term. The Quran is anticipating. The Quran is saying that a time will come when part of the Christian world and part of the Jewish world are going to reconcile and form friendship and alliance. And when that Jewish-Christian or Judeo-Christian alliance is established, as it is today, the Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance, which has NATO as its military. Are you listening to me in Bosnia? Are you listening to me in Montenegro and Albania and Kosovo? The Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance, when it has come into being, as it has come into being, which has NATO as its military arm, Allah says, do not turn to them with friendship and alliance. So you cannot be a member of NATO. If you are a member of NATO, you no longer belong to this ummah. You join them, you're not with us. Allah will not provide guidance for a wicked people. That's what NATO is. And if you differ with me, wait for the grave and you'll see. If you have no respect for my scholarship, wait for the grave and you'll see. I'm warning you. I don't want to see you punished. I want to see you rightly guided. That's why I'm struggling and struggling and struggling with you. But not with my students. They can easily understand. MashaAllah, around the world so many people can understand so easily that it was shameful on the part of Turkey to turn to NATO, to ask NATO to intervene so that Turkey could invade Syria. Don't you have any shame? Don't you have any respect for the Quran? Can this be a valid Islamic state? But thank Allah, NATO said no, we're not doing it. And as a result, I don't think you have a Turkish invasion of Syria. Alhamdulillah for that, because Turkey said, NATO said no. And we have to thank NATO for that. NATO is not yet ready for war with Russia over this issue. But then this Sultan in Turkey showed his true Islamic credentials. Yes, he showed his true Islamic credentials when NATO said no, we're not intervening. So Turkey cannot invade Syria anymore. And so Idlib cannot be saved anymore. So now he showed his true credentials as a sultan, because he opened the doors for all the refugees to flood into Europe, playing games of politics, political games with refugees. That is shameful. That is shameful. That is shameful. That is disgraceful. And every Muslim around the world today has to hang his head in shame that a Muslim leader Leader in a Muslim country should behave like this. To open the doors for the refugees to flood into Europe because this is blackmail. They did not come and help me to invade Syria, so I'm going to send the refugees. Don't you have any shame? Is this what Turkey has become? This is the leadership of Turkey? This is what has happened. So what is going to happen now? I am anticipating. This is my political analysis. I can be wrong. Yes, I can be wrong, but no harm in offering an analysis. I believe that Turkey has no other option now. None. That NATO has refused to help. Turkey has no other option than to go to Russia now and try to get an understanding to avoid war. And Russia can probably help Turkey at this time by getting Syria to suspend its struggle, military struggle in Idlib, to liberate Idlib. They waited for 2 years from 2018 to 2020, and now they may have to wait a little longer. And so Dajal's warriors in Idlib, the big bogus jihad supported by Santa Claus, will get another lease of life. And that's how you call yourself a valid jihad. You have to depend upon Santa Claus to keep you alive in your jihad. Shame on you. I'm sorry that I had to use such violent language on this program again and again, because next week I may be gone from this world, and it is very, very frustrating. These stupid people keep on the path on which they're going without any sense in their head. But thank Allah that the overwhelming majority of the people are otherwise than this. And they're recognizing that this is valid analysis, and they want no part of that bogus jihad. May Allah punish you and remove you from Syria and free the Syrian people, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Better this time from the keeper. Well, he's kept going, hasn't he? He's kept his head up, and maybe that'll be the turn in terms of his form out here.
This is a real chance in this cup competition to make a name for themselves this season. Good display today.
Oh, excellent, and one of those that you can't fault as a manager.
It's looking good, this move.
It's a deep cross towards the back post. It's a good leap,
but the header too high.
Yeah, unlucky.
Now we're going to talk about Islam. And here we enter into a segment that, in a sense, is the most relevant, if relevance is a criterion, sort of is, to today's world, because these controversies that play out today, Shiism versus Sunni, for example, the nature of Islam, its appeal as a religion on a world scale, are obviously established in the period that we're talking about. They're established slowly. One of the things that you'll have noticed from the assignment is that the author, Berkey, emphasizes very much that Islam is slow in formation, that it's not fully grown as this militant movement with a set of rules in, 632, the year that Muhammad dies. And because of that, then, it's not to be understood as some militant, conversion-oriented, jihad-centric religion from the start. I said at one point, when we were summarizing the end of the Roman Empire, that there were three heirs to the Roman Empire. One was the church. Ironic, because of course, the church had grown up persecuted by the empire. The other was the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. Remember that it called itself simply the Roman Empire. So that's the most clear claim being staked to succession to the Roman Empire, and that the third was Islam. And a couple of you said, well, Islam, that's the most surprising of all, actually, and I didn't really elaborate at that time, and that's not the center of what we're going to be talking about, because time moves on. We're in the 7th century, the collapse of the Roman Empire in the West is established 2 centuries earlier. But Islam, although developed in Arabia outside of the Roman Empire, and although very strong in places like Persia or the western part of India, would in many respects take up the inheritance of the Roman and Byzantine empires. The conquests on the Mediterranean in the east and in the south, its architectural and artistic style, its administrative structure, and not least the translation and elaborations of Greek science, medicine, and other academic forms, including, for example, the translation of Aristotle. And the influence of Aristotle would be signs of, evidence of the significance of Islam within, it's pointless to debate whether it's the Western tradition or what the Western tradition means, but within the classical legacy, within what it means to say that Rome as a polity ceased to exist in the West, and yet the classical world has continued to influence society and ideas to this day. So in talking about the history of Islam, one is inevitably going to be emphasizing its revolutionary nature. And so I'm going to go against the reading in some sense, or the reading is intended to go against the conventional way of presenting the early history of Islam. And that can be sometimes annoying. The writer is cautioning you against views you never had. Or the writer keeps on saying, well, we should not think that this, and I hadn't thought that. Just tell me what you think happened in early Islam. My apologies for that. Writers are always writing against other writers. Scholars are always writing against a prevailing interpretation. Burki is a continuist, and that is the scholarly consensus now, arguing against this notion of Islam bursting forth like some kind of pent-up explosion in Arabia. But Arabia is off the map. Islam as a movement, and certainly the Arab conquests, are unpredictable events. They may be understandable later in terms of developments in the Near East, both religious and cultural. But up until the 7th century, Arabia was on the periphery of the two great controlling empires to its north, namely Persia and Rome. And we are taking Byzantium as the heir of Rome in this sense. The problem with Arabia is that it is really dry. And before the discovery of oil, or more precisely, before the discovery that oil was useful, important, and valuable, it was a strikingly impoverished land in terms of natural resources. A terrible land, as Isaiah the prophet